What's up, everybody? Welcome into episode 6 of Just a Dude Talking Sports. A little late this morning. I know the NFL weekend is already kicked off, but I did want to touch upon some fabulous college games last night. And as usual, if you enjoyed the comment or the content, I hope you do. Be sure to subscribe below and just appreciate you joining me because I'm just a dude talking sports, amongst other things. But man, how many of you watched that UNC debacle? I mean, North Carolina got their doors completely blown off by James Madison, who, by all accounts, I mean, James Madison is a respectable FBS program. Actually, they just moved up to the Sun Belt Conference, which is FBS G5, whatever you want to call it, only 3 short years ago. JMU is still in the mold, folks, of an FCS program from the CAA. Okay. Now, Kurt Signetti did a fabulous job in building that program up to what it is today. They have some FBS kids that transferred over on that roster, but by no means is James Madison supposed to ever go to Chapel Hill, North Carolina and hang 70 on the Tar Heels. James Madison's basketball program would have a hard time hanging 70 of what his football program did. In case you missed it, James Madison wore North Carolina out. The final score was 70-50, but it wasn't even that close. I watched the entire game, and I was absolutely floored by how James Madison was handling UNC up front on both sides of the offensive and defensive lines of the ball. I mean, they were straight up. I mean, I'm not going to say they were manhandling, but they were the more aggressive, hungrier squad. They handled the lines of scrimmage on both sides. I don't know if the Carolina kids were out partying on Friday, just saying, we got a G5 opponent or wherever the case may be. But that was an embarrassment. I mean, absolute beatdown. And I'm a Tar Heel fan, by the way. I root for UNC athletics because of my grandfather's allegiance to his love for UNC basketball. But during the post game, poor Mac Brown had to go up there, and I mean, Mac looked like he wanted to cry. And there were reports as well that he went to the Carolina athletic director, Bubba Cunningham, and kind of sort of offered his resignation and said something to the effect that if he couldn't get the program turned around or whatever the case may be, he would just resign. And I think those were Mac's immediate emotions speaking. But man, I was I can't say the word lopsided because that doesn't do it justice. James Madison scored 53 points in the first half and made it look easy. And the 70 points given up by Carolina at home ties the most it has ever given up. We're talking about a program that started playing back in the 1920s. This is the most they've ever given up in a college football game at home. 70 points. Since Mac Brown has been there this past 6 years, the one constant is, for whatever reason, he cannot get the defensive side of the ball figured out. James Madison, App State did this to him a few years ago, but Carolina ended up winning that game in overtime, but they still scored a ton of points. So Gene Chizik goes elsewhere, and I was the defensive coordinator for last year, and they bring in Jeff Collins, who got fired by Georgia Tech because he couldn't do the job. So I guess he was supposed to be the stopgap. So Jeff Collins is the UNC defensive coordinator, second year. Collins was there last year as well. And no, I stand corrected. This is Collins' first year at UNC. And they just simply cannot get that side of the ball fixed for whatever reason. And this brings me to my 4-star, 5-star rant that I like to go on, because probably not one of those kids, with the exception of the running back. I stand corrected. Petaway, I think his name is. He transferred from UNC. But not many of those kids at James Madison were even recruited by UNC. So that further gives credibility to my rant when I like to go on about the 4-star, 5-star thing. Folks, it's not about that. It's about kids who are ball players and kids who aren't, right? Everybody who's a ball player, you're not going to be ranked 4 or 5-star because some kids may not ever get to the rival or 24/7 camps. But I'll save that discussion for another day. I won't go down that rabbit hole today. But it was an absolute butt whooping. Everybody from Mac Brown on down, man, that was almost a fireable offense. Like, get your stuff and get out type of ball game. So I don't know where UNC goes from here because that was an atrocious display of football at Chapel Hill. And to make it worse, with about 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, you can see the stands were empty. All the UNC faithful had left the game. That's how bad it was. That should never, ever happen. But it was terrible. Just want to rattle off a few stats to show you how dominating of a performance it was by the JMU Dukes. Their quarterback, sophomore Alonzo Barnett, ran for dang near 100 yards. He had 99 yards on 13 carries and passed for another 388. He was 22 of 24. No, that's wrong. 22 of 34, passing for 5 touchdowns and 388 yards. JMU outrushed UNC 223 yards to 141. That's how dominating it was. So I'd love to get your thoughts. Anybody want to comment? I'd love to see some comments below on what you thought about that performance. Probably one of the better performances of the day was the Michigan Wolverines introducing the UNC Trojans to the Big Ten by playing bully ball. Michigan just pushed USC around when it counted the most. They had a converted linebacker by the name of Khalil Mullings, who's now a tailback. This dude ran all over the place. Let me see if I can get his stat line. Khalil Mullings. Whoops, sorry about that, folks. Let's see what he ran for yesterday. Yesterday against USC, Mr. Mullings had 17 carries for 159 yards, 9.4 yards a carry. That was just Michigan going back to Michigan football. So Sharon Wright brought in, they replaced the kid, his name is escaping me, the quarterback there. They replaced him with Alex Orji, right? And, Orji was, he was shaky. It was his first start. But Michigan said, no problem. We'll just go back to doing what we do best, is running the ball between the tackles. And they USC's defense wasn't bad, but it was a physical thing. You can tell that Michigan was used to being physical running the ball, and USC's defense, their front four in particular, was not used to being physical and stopping the run. So Michigan got the dub 24-27. Kudos to the Wolverines. That was an impressive win. Especially, with all they've had to go through replacing Harbaugh. They have a younger team, et cetera, et cetera. That was pretty impressive, should I say. Arch Manning got his first start, which was, I think he gave himself a C+. They played UL Monroe. So, that's not a SEC opponent by any stretch. So Texas won that game 51-3. Arch Manning threw for 258 yards and 2 touchdowns with 2 interceptions. So, he's young. That's to be expected. But, man, there is no recruit that was more ballyhooed than Arch Manning. So we'll see how the Texas situation plays out. But I expect Quinn Ewers will probably be back next week. So That's that. Let's see what else we got for you. Going back to the Michigan game, the Wolverines won the game. This is Wolverine football. 10-play, 89-yard TD drive with Mullings doing most of the work. And on that drive, the former linebacker converted a third down from the Michigan 20 with 63-yard run, and that was capped off by a touchdown. So Michigan isn't quite dead yet, but, I don't know if they're going to be able to do that to the Ohio States of the world, but we shall see. But nonetheless, it was an impressive win by Michigan. USC, welcome to the Big Ten. The other game that I took note of was NC State at Clemson. Man, let me tell you something. NC State, you are an ACC opponent, okay? You are not an FCS school. You have no business going down to Death Valley and getting beat on like that. So, Dave Dorn, you got some work to do, dude. Clemson, NC State came in the game 2-1 by squeaking out wins over FCS Western Carolina, who, by the way, had NC State beat going into the fourth quarter of that game, in Louisiana Tech. But Clemson baptized those guys by fire. And they won that game yesterday, 59-35. And let me just apologize to Mr. Dabo Swinney and staff. Dabo caught a lot of heat during the first week in which Clemson lost to the University of Georgia down in Atlanta for his refusal to engage in the transfer portal. But it appears to me either the ACC is just this week or Dabo and his staff, they went back to work and they're really coaching up their kids, man. So a lot of respect. Very rarely, I very seldomly agree with Dabo's preachy approach to college football. But I got to take my hat off because the last two games, it looks like they fixed Cade Klubnik, and the Clemson offense is firing on all cylinders, and the defense is stout, folks. So most likely in the ACC, it's going to come down to an ACC championship game to get that fifth playoff spot between Miami and Clemson because they look the part now. Let me get some stats from that game. Let's see here. And now it was a beatdown. It was. Clemson 59, NC State 35, but those 35 points by NC State, that's after probably about 2 minutes in the fourth quarter where Clemson eased off the gas. They took all their starters out and played backup guys most of the game. Clemson was up, just to give you an idea of how dominant they were. They were up 45-7 at halftime. Let me repeat. Clemson was up on the ACC opponent 45-7 at halftime. Come on, NC State. Do better. Stat line. Klubnik was 16 of 24 for 209 yards and 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Solid. NC State did start another quarterback by the name of C.J. Bailey. He's a freshman out of Miami. So, you kind of take that into account, but you kind of don't. Maffa for Clemson, 7 carries, 107 yards. He was a man. And Clemson took away, or let me say they greatly neutralized NC State's greatest offensive weapon, Charlotte's own KC Concepcion. He was very quiet. And that, if you quiet him down, NC State has no other threats on offense that can really beat you. Total yards, Clemson 523 to NC State's 436. And like I said, a lot of what NC State did from a stat perspective was after that was garbage time when Clemson had already taken their starters out. So my apologies to Mr. William Dabo Sweeney there. My bad, because he has a formula, and he doesn't believe in tweaking it. Although I think that at some point in time he'll have to engage in the portal somewhat if he wants to keep up with the upper echelon, the Georgias and the Bamas and those folks. Now, if he wants to run through the ACC, Clemson probably recruits enough ACC talent to do so. But, I don't know how sustainable that is either. But my props to Dabo Sweeney and his staff for really tweaking some things and coaching his kids up. Folks, I think that was pretty much it around the world of college football. I mean, it was kind of quiet. Let me go back to the scoreboard here for a moment. Yeah, it was rather quiet. Surprisingly, going to the MAC, Buffalo beat Northern Illinois, which was ranked 23rd in overtime. That was pretty surprising. LSU mopped up UCLA 34-17. That was in Death Valley, so that wasn't surprising. Penn State put up the most yards in program history over poor Kent State. Penn State tallied 718 yards of offense against Kent State. So tough, man. Kent State 0-4. That's a proud MAC program, but they're not looking too tough now. And going to the just stepping down to the FCS level, the Mercer Bears, Mercer's defense is still rolling, folks. Yesterday against the Citadel, they held them to 57 yards rushing on about 27 carries. So Mercer's defense is still stout. However, I did watch the first half of that game, and Citadel had their opportunities. They played Mercer tough, but they just simply made too many mistakes to a really well-coached and tough Mercer squad, who is now 4-0. So Mercer is rolling. Coach Mike Jacobs has the Mercer Bears rolling, and it's going to be interesting to see how they finish up in SoCon play, because right now, as of September 22nd, Mercer looks like the best team in the SoCon and probably one of at least a top 10 team in the entirety of Division I AA football. So kudos to Mike Jacobs and his staff and the Mercer Bears as well. All right, folks, that's all I had. Thanks for joining, and thanks for tuning in. Once again, if you enjoy the content, please subscribe. And everybody have a wonderful football Sunday. Peace.